Hi everybody, Joshua here with the Heavypiano YouTube channel. Today's video will be a piano tutorial for Wake Me Up When September Ends by Green Day, just based on my improvised version. I'll talk about chords and melody, and hopefully give you some ideas to go off of, and you can create your own version at home. So let's get into it. Let's see here. I have a couple chord progressions I was thinking about. So we have a G major, and then it's just a descending bass line. So we're going to have like a G over F sharp, and then G over E, which is basically like E minor. Right, there's our G major triad, and we're lowering the bass. And then like a D chord, D sus, or like G over D, and then C. We'll have that ninth in there for the melody. I'll talk about melody in a second. And C minor to G, right? So that's a basic progression. You're gonna see it a lot throughout the whole piece. The next progression to think about is kind of like this B section progression. I'm gonna say it's like a E minor. It's kind of like a B minor 7. You can add that suspended note in there. That 6 in there. It's like a C major. You can have like the F sharp in there to have that sharp 11 kind of sound. You can add the A, but mostly G. So I say mostly, so E minor, B minor, C, G, right? As far as like basic chords. And then we'll talk about how to modify and add different notes. But so think of those two progressions. I'll have them up on screen as I go through different sections. So I started at G major, right? And I'm just kind of playing around, trying to like set the emotion I want and in like kind of the rhythmic setting I want before I start the piece. Right, so maybe it's a little bit too pretty, right? Just kind of messing around, rolling some of these 10th chords in my left hand, adding the 9th in there, just going over notes in the G major scale. And then, there's that 6th kind of sound, making a G major sound, right? And then kind of putting like a C over G kind of sound there. Take a listen and watch through my acoustic version to kind of see what I was doing there. But the idea was I wanted to approach it with like, okay, so I have a certain mood in mind, so I'm going to try to create these like calming sounds using the key of G, and then kind of like some of these changed chords, like modified chords over G. Just like the main melody goes over like a descending bass line with the G chord. It's kind of like the bass, or the core of that melodic idea. I kind of like want to create like introduction in that manner, if that makes sense. So let's talk about how to play the melody after we've kind of set the stage a little bit on that G major chord. Let's see here. So we have melody on A over G. So, and then we have that descending bass line. Right, and then a C major, C minor, right? And so, and you do that much again, same thing. Okay, and I started adding a few modifications in there. I'll talk about that in a sec. When we get to that B section, so I should say the last chord in the B section goes from G to like a D over F sharp. We're just moving, it's like a chordal movement to the E minor. Okay, so more or less, so that second time, E minor, B minor, C, D. So, but yeah, more or less, it's kind of those melodies and chords I'm using over this. So how am I adding or subtracting or adding rhythms? So one of the things I like to do, let's see here. So at the beginning, you'll see me do this in a few other arrangements. I'll do this technique, or I don't know if it's a technique or what, but like where I let my melody sing in my right hand, and the left hand is kind of like just doing some movement. So let me see if I can recreate that. It's a little bit harder because I'm not in front of the acoustic. I'm here on my keyboard. It's a little bit different sound. So it's like the left hand's like doing this, like not necessarily in time, but just providing support for the right hand to sing. And then the right hand is not singing like real strict within the rhythm. Whoa, excuse me. And the right hand's getting in on it too a little bit, right? So I'm using my pinky to sing the melody, and then there's just kind of this like blurred notes. For another example of when I use this, check out my video on Motion Picture Soundtrack, that Radiohead cover, where I do kind of the same idea where like the melody is singing out, but then there's like these like churning notes in the middle there. Or underneath the melody. And then as I develop it, I come back, and so to kind of like set the rhythm, then I'll start to do more arpeggiated like accompaniment patterns. So there, I'm taking these chords, and I'm just moving one or two notes a step or half step away, and it's just kind of an experiment. So there, the G major, right? Instead of just playing the same notes and chord over, so I'm like taking a section and just moving a note or two just to create a little bit more interest within the chord. Instead, so for the example, like you could just play. Right? Or what I'm trying to do is take kind of that tempo. I'm also getting a little more give rhythmically. So that C in there, I don't know if I like that necessarily. I've just been playing it because it's not offensive necessarily. But so again, experiment and see if it gives you the tone and the emotion that you're looking for. So here, so you have a C chord. Our melody's on the ninth there, so I can double the ninth here if I want. Sometimes doubling a note makes it weaker, which is an odd thing to say, but sometimes it does. I find that for the ninth, it's generally kind of a good sound. So there, I went from like this. So I did go from like an octave in the fifth to like this kind of shape with the A in there instead. So from C major, there's my six. I'm a big fan of the ninth, minor third, fifth kind of sound. Another thing you could do is those inner voices are moving. So on the C minor, so the D went down and did a little melody there. And it's just adding like some depth and some like texture to it. So it's not just like the same thing over and over again. So again, this kind of feeling is different from this feeling. Right? Rolling from the bottom. So it's just different techniques to spread the chords out, add some movement, add some emotion into your playing. Let's see here. Let me play that again with maybe some different ideas. So into the B section there, I'm kind of like walking down into the chord, so it's not just a switch from G to E minor, G, D over F sharp, E minor, right? So the B section here, same kind of ideas we can play around with. So I'm adding some notes there. Experiment, right? So I have this E minor chord. I have my melody on A, which is like the 4th, so it kind of creates this suspended sound, but it's resolving to the 5th, right? So I can also add like some suspended notes here, these two like clashy, crushy notes here in the middle, or let me take this shape and move it around the chord and see what that sounds like. Right? So I'm kind of spreading out my notes here. And instead of just going right from measure to measure, or, I'm taking some breaths and adding a little bit, I'm giving myself a little bit of space. There's another little pattern. So instead of just like playing like the same notes in the same rhythm, I'm like trying to create like some movement in the inner voices that are kind of supporting the melody. Right? So again, like breathing, like it's like motion, slow, build, slow. It's like this like breath you're trying to create within the music. And it's just all over like a G major chord, but I'm adding modification there. Let me see if I can do that again. So like we're gonna breathe in, breathe out. So that's using G as a kind of a pedal point, and then trying to create that flow and the movement of the sound changing and growing, and then like kind of pulling back a little bit. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from when I improvise these pieces. Maybe it's a bit too much for you. Maybe it's not your style. I imagine you probably haven't watched this far if you don't like the way I play. But that is kind of some of the philosophy behind what I'm doing when I create these. If you listen to a lot of the things that the covers I've done or some of my original music, you'll hear a lot of these like stylistic choices, kind of the way I play. But I hope that gives you some ideas to go off of. If this is a song you like, it's really, it's rewarding and an enjoyable thing to take a piece that and find a way to make it your own on the piano. And so if anything else, I hope I've kind of give you some ideas to go off of. Check out my version. There's also a Synthesia version. It's not exactly the same because sometimes people say like the tools don't matter, it's the inner art or whatever, but the tools do matter. The tools that you use to create music influence the way it sounds and influences like kind of the sounds you come up with or the way it feels. And so when I'm recording these on my acoustic and improvising on the acoustic, like I'll come up with much different kind of sounds than on my keyboard here in my studio when I'm trying to share these ideas with you. So anyway. Thanks for watching. Big thank you to my patrons on Patreon for supporting the channel, supporting me, encouraging me to make these videos for your requests. I have a bunch of patron requests I'm still working on. They're not quite ready, but I'm hoping to get them done soon. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying healthy, and I will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.